All right, here we go. All right, so it is officially St. Patrick's Day. So we'll try to make it quick so everyone can go enjoy and have fun. So let me switch back to my slideshow. So we are going to talk about going slow and personalizing. We are just sort of doing a review of things that a couple of us went, or that we learned when we went to the Comprehensible Classroom Acquisition boot camp last summer. And I love this topic that we're talking about today because honestly has changed a lot about how I have started teaching. Kind of made me think, goodness, I need to do a little bit different stuff in my classroom. So today we're going to go over these two things, going slow and personalizing. Then like usual, we'll do planning ahead, talk about some needs, some wants, and if you need a certificate of attendance, I will let you have that. Okay, so what does it mean to go slow and personalize? And I feel like I wrote this up here. I think as teachers, our goal is to provide authentic language and an authentic pace. Jason, I don't know about you, but do you struggle with this with your class? Like kids are, slow down. I don't understand what you're saying. Go slower. This is kind of what I get all the time.
Oh yeah, definitely. But that
So
hesitation, I think, is super significant. If we're not careful, we answer the question before we let them struggle through to the answer.
yeah, I mean, but there's also something to be said for, I don't the second part on this. What is the point of what we're doing if students can't follow it? And I don't know about you, but I've been in classes where someone was talking, and whether it was a language class or whether it was some other content class, they would go so quickly I didn't have time to process it and figure it out, and I got very frustrated as a learner. And it sort of made me think, our kids probably go through that too. So I want to do a little example of something. So let's imagine this is what you would be hearing as a learner. And I'm not sure, Jason, if you'll be able to see this on your phone or not. So let's imagine this represents how fast the teacher is speaking. And you tell me if you think students would be able to process this and be able to go on in class. So do we think our students could follow along in their second language learning if we're going this fast? By the way, this is a super cool program called Spreeder, and it lets you like practice words per minute. That is like a ton of words per minute. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I think it illustrates what it's like for our students.
Going with a hard no on that?
Yeah,
Absolutely
real hard
not.
no, right? We may not actually speak that fast in class, but it sort of is an illustration of when we go so fast that kids can't understand, we're gonna lose them. So if you're like me, I could pick up some of those words and sort of string them together in my head because it was my native language. Now, if you're in a second language class, probably not going to be that easy. And I don't know about everybody else, but I feel like my kids have a lot less cognitive strength and endurance right now. Hold on, I got to let somebody in. I feel like the smallest cognitive task exhausts them. It's almost like they just cannot do long, drawn out things in class anymore. What about you, Jason? Both Jasons are here. Hey, Jason.
Hello.
To answer your question, yes and no, and I think it's because we have cognitively set them up to not have a little bit more endurance in
That's
how we
cool.
are operating our classrooms, and so it's kind of like you jump into a master's degree program, for example. Well, you kind of have to cognitively build your, I don't know, your mental energy or your mental focus to stay with it a little bit longer.
Right. And I think that's the thing that our kids are missing. So, Jason, the thing that we just talked about, we're talking about going slow and personalizing. And the thing I just showed a little example of, do we think students could follow along if you as the teacher are doing the second language at this rate? And Jason B and I were like, nope, definitely not. And I said, one of the things that I'm noticing with my students is there's a lot of cognitive, I guess fatigue is the word I'm going for, things that require a lot of their brains, they are not really into right now. So this is why we talk about going slow. And it has made a pretty good difference in my class. Not as much as the pointing, but the pointing has been huge. So again, a lot of this stuff is coming from Martina Bex's group, the Comprehensible Classroom. And one of the big pillars of what they put out is to go slow and point. So not only are you slowing down how you're speaking, even though we want to get our kids used to a native level, it's not worth it if they can't understand what's going on. So we want to go a little bit slower with them in the language until you've established meaning. Once you've established meaning, you can go a little bit. And a key thing is to also point. And I think when I share some of my resources, people kind of look at them and are like, what is all this? I have really, because of this training, I have just started to do a lot more pointing. I think earlier in my career, I just sort of spoke and here's something you should read. And I didn't really have a lot of good visual cues for my students. And so I have noticed since I started doing this go slow and point, how much more the students are actually understanding. So I want to show you an example. And I don't know, Jason, if you do a lot of in your class as well. Uh, this is an example of something. Jason, did you teach this unit, Jason? French, Jason?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. We'll have to talk about it. So I'm going to actually mute you for a second because I got to echo real quick. Okay, so like this is something.
If Jason will echo, it would have. Yeah, that's what we're getting background noise on.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the lesson that I gave my level 2 kids about 2 weeks ago, all about clothing, right? So I pulled in, instead of just saying this is a shirt, this is whatever, I pulled in the Le Sap out of Congo. And so as I teach this, let's see if my mouse will show up. There's my mouse. Oh, you know what? And I have this thing I can use too. So we're going to pretend this little laser is what I'm actually pointing to when I'm teaching, right? So I would read this whole sentence to the kids, but I would say voici and then do lots of like hand gestures like here is. And then les hommes, and I would point to the guys, and maybe stop and say, what do you think are? Du Congo, ils sont les sapeurs. I would go through this whole thing. Wow, I pulled the wrong slide. I should have pulled the slide where it's got like actual clothing vocabulary on there. But I go through each of these. So if like one of the examples was he's wearing a blue shirt, I would talk about the blue shirt and I would point to it. Give me a second to pull it up. I pulled the introduction slide instead of. Jason, yeah, they're getting ready for a game. Yeah. It happens, right? It happens. So here's my actual slideshow, and I'm going to share this tab. So as I'm talking about this with my students, I go word for word, literally, and point. And I go slow because it's the first day that they've ever encountered these words, right? So il, and I would point to him. Il, class, il porte, and I might make a hand gesture or a body motion about wearing. Un pantalon, and I would point to the pantalon. And then in my room, I've got colors, so I'd go over and point to the colors where it says gris, and I would go through each of those sentences, and they're very, very slow, like painfully slow. But I'm pointing and I'm giving kids time to process. Here's the word. Here's how it sounds. Here's what it actually is, without having to do a ton of English in between. Sometimes you might need a breakdown, sometimes you don't. But the going slow and pointing has really shifted a lot of what I do in my classroom. So I'll pause there for a second. Do either of the Jasons have a comment about, actually, you know what, I think that is where I'm supposed to ask if anyone has questions. I set it up in our slideshow. Like I was saying, you can never go too slow for novice learners, right? They need to follow along. And it should feel for us incredibly, boringly, and ridiculously slow. We are not novice learners. And after you establish meaning for what you're talking about, then you can increase the speed. Okay, so now, do either of the Jasons want to comment on maybe you go slow, maybe you don't go slow? What is the role of pointing in your classroom? Yak at me.
I know I am just a ridiculous hand talker.
Oh, yeah?
So I think it happens where like I'm like, what do I do with my hands? Let me point. I try. Sometimes I find myself being like very physical when I'm trying to explain something. I'm like, you know.
We're going to put on a song and dance show
Right,
today.
right. I don't. Speaking of like going slow in particular, like today, I was doing some stuff with the passé composé versus imperfect, like preterite versus imperfect, and it was blowing some people's minds, and it brought me back, and I was like, yeah, I remember like having to go really slow because this made no sense, and Yep. It's like it's a. They're all like, I was like, look, if it doesn't make sense, it's okay.
For sure.
It's
I
not
mean,
going to make sense.
and I think especially for our students who are maybe not necessarily too excited about taking a language because they think it's
Hmm.
very hard. I think when you can go slow enough where it's like ridiculously easy to understand what's going on in class, you're building confidence and you're
Right.
definitely lowering whatever effective filter they have through the roof. I'm loving the idea of going slow, and honestly, pointing has made a whole lot. I think I used to point in general directions, but I'm very
Hmm.
specific now about here's the word I'm talking about, here's the thing I'm talking about. Like it's a more specific pointing than just, well, over there, Vanna White's
Yeah.
talking.
I like that you
I've
were saying about the having colors up too, because that's one of the things that I've been finding. Like I've been trying to find things to hang up and stuff, and that's what I'm gonna add is colors for sure. Because
They'd be awesome. That would be a good
so
poster to have
nice to just be able to point and be like
for
this one.
sure. Yeah.
For me,
Spanish.
yes, I like the other Jason. I kind of do a lot of movement in my room in general. I'm all over the place in my room. But yeah, I am somewhat specific in that, like, for example, we're doing la ropa and clothing and verbos reflexivos now. But in clothing, literally, I'm pointing at my shirt and I'm discussing it, talking about his thing in the target language. And I am moving a little bit slower. But eventually, I do get to the point where, I mean, I make my kids literally get in front of each other. One line rotates, one line sits still. I don't know. You guys have probably done
Mm-hmm.
activities like this, but
Mm-hmm.
and they literally are looking at their clothing, pointing at it, describing what it is that they're wearing right now in the moment in that color, so that they're getting like massive amounts of visual prompting
Yeah.
along the journey. So yeah, I do. I think the pointing, like you said, not Vanna White, but very specific, pointing at something directly. I agree. I think it's helpful.
Right.
Because language is context, and that gives them context.
And something when it comes to like clothing or school objects that lends itself easy to pointing. I think when we get into the less concrete things, and that's when I have the English and French when I'm introducing stuff on the board, then we move past it once they've learned it, and now I can just point to it without the English, those kinds of things. Um, I just, it's really helped me get in a better sort of routine of teaching and better patterns of teaching. But the second part of today's thing is all about personalizing. And I don't know about other, is it still a thing in your district, Jason? Like the personalized learning? Is that a thing? The shift in tone?
Every once in a while, they kind of make a little bit of a talk. I think they've kind of moved off of it.
It used to be a thing a few years ago where it was like, oh,
Yeah.
we're going to do personalized learning, personalized learning. And to me, it's kind of redundant because it's like, man, what we do is personalized, everything we do. I'm going to give you the things that you need. I'm going to help you be successful. That to me, that's personalization. But to get a little bit more of a technical definition, the idea of personalizing your class is what you're doing to make it student centered. It takes the your interests out of it. Like obviously kids
Hey.
don't do what? Oh, um, and so, but what does student centered mean? And so I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Center for Advanced Research on Language Acquisition, also known as CARLA. But CARLA defines student centered instruction is what you're doing that it's built upon what kids need, what they already know, and what they can do. So taking them from where they are and getting them to a place where they do the thing that you need them to do. So what do students need? What in our language classes, they need a ton of input. What do they know? They know their own lives. They know their own interests. They know some other content. And what can they do? You know, there's this phrase that you hear a lot. They're novice language learners. They're not novice like people. They're not novice humans. They have a pretty good background and stuff, and they have some natural curiosity for different topics. But what they can do in the language is they can interpret and they can share and they can use gestures. They can use one word. And as they progress through their language learning, obviously they can do more. So this is what they need, what they know, and what they can do. And so our job is to sort of build on it. And we personalize it by asking questions with a purpose. So a few weeks ago, I think we talked about communicating with a purpose, to learn about others, to entertain, to share about our lives, the world around us. There it is. The purpose is to learn about ourselves, each other, and the world around us, and also to entertain. And some of the ideas that the comprehensible classroom puts out is, some strategies for making it personal. Do the weekend chat. Do you guys ever do these weekend chats? They always look so cool, but I'm always behind in my curriculum, and I never take the time to actually do a weekend chat. Do either of the Jasons do these things? As like warm ups on Fridays or Mondays?
That's a big no for my group. I just don't.
Huh.
Like you. I'm too focused on the other things I gotta cover. I don't normally get to that. Like almost ever, never, ever.
They look so cool, and I love them. And I like the stuff from Dr. Conti looks really cool, like those sentence structures. I'm just like, man, I have so much things I have to get through. I don't know how to use those things with what I'm doing. Um, but I mean, it's a cool thing to do if you can. Card talk. Does anybody do card talk or chit chatting or person? I think these are very comprehensible classroom specific strategies. I think it's just sort of like free reign interpersonal communication. But you can modify that and use it in your classroom. Like, what are kids talking about? There's probably some crazy thing on TikTok they're talking about. Probably some game. Probably prom is prom season for everybody. So you can use things that are going on in their lives to talk about clothing, to talk about weather. Like, would you wear your prom dress or places in town? You're gonna wear your prom dress over to Burger King? Are you gonna wear your prom dress to work? Are you gonna wear your prom dress while you wear your prom tux while you're doing your household chores? You could tie some of that stuff in. Those are things kids want to talk about. Um, but ask these questions, have these prompts, connect to their lives. So it becomes a conversation, right? I think sometimes, if you're like me, some of my teachers used to just be like, all right, it's speaking practice. Say this sentence to your partner. Say this sentence to your partner. And what is the actual purpose there, right? Like repetition, pronunciation, sure, maybe, but is there a communicative process, a communicative purpose on that? But if you can tie in all of these things to sort of personalize your classroom, lead to conversations, to engage kids in what they want to talk about, I think it'd be a pretty cool classroom. And the thing I was just mentioning earlier, we can connect what we do to almost any other content. Patrick Wallace at the state, he does, I can't remember exactly how he phrases it, but he's like, we can do anything. We're just a language. Whatever you want to teach, we can teach it in our language. So there's that you can connect to if your curriculum will allow. And one of the examples that came from Comprehensible Classroom was like, hey, if they all went to a competition, like a soccer game, Jason, or if they all went to prom or military ball, or if they're in the musical, if there's some commonality, start using that. Who went? Where did you go? What did you compete in? Have those conversations that ties into the things that they did. And that would be the way that you personalize it. Now, I know if you have looked at Somos or Comprehensible Classroom or a lot of that stuff, I think that they're a little bit more flexible in what you can talk about. They're not like as tied into here's your vocabulary, here's this, here's that. So those of us who do have those sort of restrictions may have to like just do this on a minor level, but it's good stuff. It's good food for thought. It's good to think about when you have those free moments or those days where you're like, I really don't want to have to teach just about passé composé today. What can I do instead? You could turn that into a, where did you go over the weekend? What did you do last night? What time did you get
Well,
to
I
school
mean,
today?
can I make a point here? I think just like in general, like I know that we have multiple teachers teaching the same level, and we have to move our students together so that they all at least have a basic awareness of the language, no matter what class they came out of. So I get that, but I'm very, very flexible in that our kid asked me some random word that's outside of my vocab list, for example. I'm always quick to let them build on the language themselves and make it personal because they want to know specifically how to communicate about that thing,
Right,
still within the theme that we're under, but a
right.
little bit off of the vocab list. You know what I'm saying? That makes it personal
Yeah.
because that's something they wanted to know specifically.
For sure. Like I love to do like the personalized vocabulary list for my class. Like, hey, here's the stuff you got to learn, like shorts and shirts and boots and socks. And they're like, well, how do you say hoodie? How do you say leggings? How do you say whatever, whatever? You build that in. Yeah, that's a great point, Jason. Super great. Because honestly, those are the words they need to communicate, and our whole class is about communication. So give them the things. They're not going to want to talk about like the random sports that old people do. They want to know about the sports that they want to do. They want to know about how do you say, how many of you get this question in your classes? How you say talkies? I get that question every year. How do you say taco in French? I'm like, le taki.
Or like, how do you say honey mustard?
Right. Yeah, that's one. How do you say ranch? Le ranch n'existe pas en France.
And then they're just like, wait, what? I thought they had good food.
They do, and ranch doesn't
It's
exist.
not ranch.
So, yeah, so you're right. I mean, that's another layer of personalization, right? Give them the words they want to talk about. I think about me in any French class I've ever been in. Nobody talked about the sport that I did in college. I had to go learn that word. So tell me the words I want to talk about. Okay, and another great thing I think we all do a great job is we are the way to scaffold personalization. Provide those words you're going to ask about, right? Like if you know you need to ask this question or they need to know this word, give it to them in your target language and in whatever common language you have. For me, it's English. I think most of us are probably using those visual supports a lot. I don't know about you guys, but I have pictures on everything in my classroom. Every presentation I do has pictures. Notes have pictures. Visual supports, I think, is just the second layer of what we do in foreign language teaching. Asking yes or no questions and then maybe moving up to either or questions. Then you can do more open-ended with who and where and what questions. I think the idea here is to move from more concrete and more structured responses to give the students a little bit more freedom to communicate, which is a little bit more challenging, right? A who question is a whole lot harder to talk about than a yes or a no question or a why or those kinds of things. And the key thing that I got from this that I really loved was to accept all of their answers, especially at the novice level. If they can only point or make a movement, accept it and then give it back to the class. So if Jason can only point to the phone, I would say, oh yeah, phone, telephone, Jason, give it back to the whole class. Even though Jason's only pointing at it, the whole class can know the word for telephone. If they can only give you single words, go for it. If they can give you strings of word, cool. If they got to resort to English every now and again, within reason, accept it. Like, do you guys get the franglais and the spanglais sometimes? Spanglish, I guess. Sometimes that's appropriate. They don't have the words. Let them use it. Teach them the word. Move on.
Definitely get Spanglish occasionally, of course.
Right. They don't have the words yet. So that's kind of the end of my spiel today. Very quick, trying to not take all afternoon because I know we got stuff to do as the seasons are progressing. Do you guys have any questions or reflections or personal experiences with either going slow or personalizing your classes? I know we sort of talked as we were going, but I love to hear other people's experiences.
I don't know if it's like for those of you who've been in the classroom longer. But I was talking today with another teacher about how our students seem to not have a whole lot of things going on at home. So like when you talk about like, well, hey, what did you do this weekend? What do you like doing? Like I'm trying to like personalize it, and they kind of are like, I didn't really do anything. And then you're like, okay, like, come on, you did something. And they're like, well, I slept.
Yep.
Like, okay. And I wonder if you have any has anybody else experienced like an uptick in just like what y'all doing at home, maybe because of COVID and like things not being, open as much? Because it just seems more than I remember than I'm used to.
And especially in some of these schools where maybe transportation is an issue or cost of activities, especially with gas right now, it's not going to be easy for some folks, for a lot of folks. But yeah, no, I'm with you. And that's when I think you can sort of shift the questioning from, oh, you slept. What time did you go to sleep? What time did you wake up? Did you sleep well? Did you sleep in a bed? Did you sleep on the floor? Did you sleep? Oh, that could go wrong. Don't ask what to did you sleep on yeah, well, I think about like homeless students. I don't want to like embarrass homeless students.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Did you sleep at your house? Did you sleep at a relative's house? Did you eat breakfast and then go back to sleep?
What were you streaming when you fell asleep?
Right.
Were you
I
on
know
Netflix?
this is terrible, but because of sometimes because of COVID, kids became,
Yeah, but for
they
sure,
were
it's real.
already digitally focused, but now it's, what TikTok video did you watch? What song were you listening to? What was the last thing you streamed on Netflix? And I know it sounds terrible out there, but I mean, if that's what they're in,
I'm not gonna
um,
lie. Some weekends that's me. Some weekends
I
I
was
want to
gonna
sit in my
say it's hope it's
I
not too
will.
terrible because it kind of describes me to a certain degree.
I'll
right,
tell you.
right.
But you can
So,
also say, how many hours were you on your phone? What was your, did you make your bed? Do you sleep with 4 pillows or 5? Or um,
right.
sort of those kinds of questions, I guess. But it would take, had you not asked me this in the afternoon where I wasn't right on the spot, I'm not sure I could have come up with those things in the middle of class either. Like,
Right.
Right.
you didn't go outside? Did you check the mail? Did you cook breakfast? Did you eat breakfast? Did you do the dishes? I think it might be a good way
Describe
to,
your bedroom to me. What does your bedroom look like? Tell me about the
yeah,
colors, the walls, the furniture, yeah.
yeah. So you could go with sort of that if they don't ever. Dear troglodyte
Exactly.
students,
Right.
describe your cave to me.
Yes.
um,
Well,
yeah,
it is
fun
a harder
time.
stretch, though. I mean, and again, I guess you have to think about the overall community. I know it sounds terrible, but what is the poverty rate of your community? So are kids able to participate in all those extra sports like you were mentioning earlier? And so my community, we have a pretty good variety. So we always have kids participating in events and activities, and then you'll have some that don't as much, but they have a bunch of part-time jobs at the high school level. So what's your part-time job? What does that look like?
Yeah, true.
You know?
Or did you babysit for somebody? Did you have to take care of somebody?
Right.
Um, and I do think there's a fine line there that we walk about, um, making sure that we're not putting kids on the spot with like bad life circumstances,
Sure.
um, and also not glorifying kids who get to do everything because their lives are wonderful. But that's
Right.
normal teaching stuff.
That's right.
All right. So, all right. I think I got another one of thing. All right, guys. Tomorrow. Nope. Today's Thursday. Don't even know what day it is half the time in these days. Saturday is the flag spoken language contest. So hopefully you guys will have some kids do that and make everybody proud. The big thing that I'm starting to think about, because it's March, which means next month is April, and then boom, it's going to be graduation, is what do we want to do next year? I think we've sort of run the course of the comprehensible classroom redelivery, which has been fun. It's good to get everybody on the same page. And I'll tell you where my brain is sort of going. I don't know if you guys have been getting the updates from Patrick Wallace, but there's a group of folks who are doing curriculum writing. Now, I don't mean like, here's a textbook, here you go, here's like pre done lessons. What each of these groups is doing is setting up a progression, like and it's all based on the AP themes. So they're setting up which theme will we go over first, what are their can do statements in that theme, what are some vocabularies that we should learn. It's just updating those model units that have been on the website for forever. So by June or July, I think July, what we should have is each level from elementary all the way up to, I think, level 4, because we're not touching AP, I don't think. I'm not sure. You should have a yearly progression. Here's the theme. Here's some can do statements. Here's vocabulary. Here's connections, all that stuff. And in each of those 6 units, there's going to be one model lesson. Like, here's how I would attack this activity. And it's going to have resources. It's going to have a good structure to it. I'm doing the level 1, and we're doing all of ours in sort of the everyday IPA format. And I think that is sort of spreading. So I know between Spanish and French and German, at least on level 1, we're going to have the same thematic progressions broken out into each languages. And I'm thinking about our rural communities. Spanish Jason, you're going to have a different situation because you guys have a big department. You guys have some pretty set curriculum. But those of us who are in like singletons like me, or people who are in districts where they may just have a textbook, it's supposed to be a good step towards more of a communicative approach. All that to say, you're going to have 6 units and one lesson in each unit, which is not a lot, but I think it might be a good place for those of us in who don't have a ton of support in these rural areas, to maybe use that as a discussion thing. Maybe we do collaboration sessions more where we're sharing ideas, sharing resources, sort of fleshing out those units that I think my dog just broke something. Sorry, I just got distracted. I heard a noise, and all of a sudden my dog is in the window. So who knows what that was. So my thinking is, because I really am loving collaboration. I love to hear what other people do and how we can talk and share things with each other, because I think that's one of the reasons that it's actually one of the reasons I started this whole PLC, because I'm like, man, it's just the four of us in this building and we don't have other people to reach out to or collaborate with. We're all teaching our own things. So in my mind, I think curriculum collaboration would be great for me as a teacher, but I want you guys who are coming on the regular or people who are watching on the regular at home, what kinds of things would be useful to you in this PLC? Because I don't want it to be one of those things where you're like, I'm going to log in and then zone out. Like, it needs to be something that is meaningful to you. So if you contemplate that over the next couple weeks, I'm going to love and solicit your feedback. And that is the end of today, you guys. 40 minutes. Yay. So you guys can start your St. Patrick's Day early. If you need proof that you were here, if you will scan that code and fill out the quick little Google form, you will get an automatic certificate of participation with my appreciation. Appreciation. That's all the same thing, right? So anyways, guys, I hope that you have a good rest of the day, a good weekend. And I don't know if I will see you before your spring breaks, but if I do not, I hope you have a wonderful spring break. And I'll see you guys hopefully.
You too, madam.
Yeah, see you guys in April. Have a good one, guys.
All right. Oh, hey, Shannon, I was going to mention to you.